What's up, horror community? I'm Stock, and in today's video, we are going to be ranking the Scream openings. So there's 6 in total, and something about the Scream openings is we always look forward to how a Scream movie is going to kick off, because there's always that charmful opening for the most part. Ever since the original and how successful that opening was, every single Scream coming after that, there was always something there. They always change it up in a slight way to make it special. But just like this franchise, they're all good in a lot of people's eyes. There's no bad opening. So I really wanted to rank this. I think it'd be a lot of fun, and I'm curious to see how you guys think of my list here and what I have last, what I have first, and all of that stuff. So let's get into it. Ranking in last place is Scream 4's opening. So this is the only opening for me personally that I don't really like. I don't hate it, but I just don't really like it. It's the only one I could say that for. And for me, it's just every time I watch this opening, it kind of drags on. One of the big negatives I have with it is just how long it seems and how long it goes for. I think it goes for, I mean, all the openings probably go for like around the same time frame, but for the 10 plus minutes this one goes for, it just drags for me. And also the concept. I'll talk about the concept of it. You have in this opening the fake outs of stab movies. So like the first opening is you thought it was real at first, and then it turns out to be fake. It's a stab movie, and the next one is another stab movie in a stab movie, and the next one is another stab movie in a stab movie, and then you have like the real one to end it off. Concept isn't bad, don't get me wrong. I get the uniqueness that they were going for with it. I understand the change up. It is very different than the other ones that came before it. I get all of that stuff. But I don't know, something for me, it just didn't work. It just didn't work for me. I didn't get behind the charm. I just kind of find it a little bit boring and just unrememberable opposed to all the other ones, and I just ultimately just didn't enjoy this one as much as the others. Even like all the characters they showed in this, like none of them even stuck out to me in like any type of rememberable field as some of like a lot of the other ones in opening. And I understand like openings, like some of these, usually for the most part, these characters get killed off. You never see them again. They're just kind of used for the opening. But even a lot of these ones, like I don't remember like any of them, like their faces, like none of them stick with me. They're just kind of just generic people, like generic people that I kind of like, oh, if I watch Scream 4 again, oh, okay, that's the person I kind of remember slightly. But whenever I'm not watching Scream 4, I never think of this opening. It's always a pretty big negative I have when ranking Scream 4 as a whole. And yes, it is my clear. So this is a clear for me, a clear last place. Ranking in at number 5. And now all of these ones I definitely at least, I could say love. I could say love for sure. But ranking in at number 5 is the new one, Scream 6. So I really like Scream 6 opening. Scream 6's was very, very cool. And it kept my brain guessing throughout the whole thing. I definitely have to see it again. I still have only seen Scream 6 once. So I've only seen this opening once. I can see the potential in this opening and how unique it is. But basically my key points of it is you open up with this lady, she's on the phone, whatever. I think she's like a professor or something in terms of, I don't know, she has like some type of horror background, I believe. I have to see it again. She has that. She's the one that gets killed. She gets lured in by the Ghostface killer. She's the one who gets killed by Ghostface. Which all that stuff was good, you know, like, okay, that was a good opening, whatever. But then they spiced it up here. And they have Ghostface killer, and then that Ghostface killer takes off his mask, and you see his face, and you're like, what the hell? Like, you're guessing like instantly, what does that mean? You just had a Ghostface killer unmask himself in the opening. So it's like, okay, that usually happens at the end of the movie. So where is this going? So you're immediately like thinking like, okay, what's this mean? That person, you can see like he's walking to his home or whatever in the opening. He passes like the group of heroes like Tara and all of them, says hi, oh, he's friends with them somehow, whatever. That was cool. So they like literally are passing Ghostface, which I liked, a little detail like that. But then ultimately where I'm getting at is that killer, that Ghostface killer that did that killing, he gets killed. So there's a lot of kills in these sentences. He gets killed by another Ghostface, who ultimately was the Ghostface killer of Scream 6. So he got killed from a Ghostface in the opening. So like what I sum it up to be is you had Ghostface killing Ghostface in the opening. that is like what I said in the past. Like that's just brilliant. Like that's fantastic stuff. It's definitely an opening for me that could definitely hire once I see it again and again, because all these other ones, I have a lot of reps of seeing them. Even Scream 5s I've seen like several times over. Like Scream 6 is so new, I've only seen it one time, but the charm of it I already love. I love that fact of Ghostface killing Ghostface in an opening. Like that is so left field from anything we've seen before in Scream. So it's fantastic. It's a great opening, but it's gonna rank 5 for me for now. Rank it in. At number 4 is Scream 5's opening. And I love this opening a lot. So this one focuses around Tara. So she's one of the main characters we see from Scream 5. She lived on in Scream 6, where you saw even more of her and who she is as a character, and you grow to like her even more. And now she goes into 7. I believe they're making a 7th, but she goes into 7. So she's part of like this new era. But she starts off this new era as the opening scene in 5. And I loved it. Like there was so much similarities to Scream 1's opening with her. And it was great. It was fantastic. It was literally a modern version of 1996's opening in 2022. So like you could, opposed to the old school phone, she had an iPhone. Her questions were very more modern. Like Ghostface was asking Tara much more modern day horror type of questions, opposed to, you know, Casey in Scream 1, who got questions about like Michael Myers and Friday the 13th. This one, you got a bunch of new type of horror genres and movies, which was awesome. I really liked all the similarities in that. I thought it was great. Where I really credit this opening on for me, and what makes it stand out a lot, is the fact that she lived in the opening. That is great. That is different than any other opening as well. I always love when they can at least do something different in each one. Don't get me wrong, I love the similarities. I was just going off about it, but the fact that they had its own big difference, and the fact that somebody lived through that opening. Yes, she got kind of mauled in that opening, and it was kind of crazy she lived, but it was awesome. You see a character survive Ghostface in the opening. I can't get over that fact. I just absolutely love it. I eat it up. And you have a main character like her too, who was able to kind of sprout from that, because usually in the openings you don't get a main character type role like that. You'll see live through. So that set up such a difference for Scream as a whole, and that opening and the charm of it and everything, the similarities in the modern time of world, I loved all of that, and that's a great opening. Here we go. The top three Scream openings for myself. Ranking in at number 3 is Scream 2's. And I had this opening as my second favorite for a really, really long time. I think since I've gotten into Scream, it was always, but it's recently changed. And this opening for me is, it's nothing deep in terms of story or like who lives on or anything like that, but it's just a very, very freaking charmful follow up to the original for me. Like I remember when I watched for the first time, I'm like, god damn, I love this opening once again. This is the opening for me that showed me like, oh, the Scream 1 is not the only one that has that awesome, you know, charmful opening that sets up the movie. Like this one is awesome too. And I love the setting. I love that it's in the movie theater. I love that whole atmosphere. I love that they're watching Stab. We talked about Scream 4 with the Stab openings. I love that they're watching Stab from Stab 1. They're watching in Scream 2. I love how everyone in the theater has Ghostface mask on, because they're all fans of like the Stab movie. And they all have that on, so you can't tell who the killer is. That possibility is awesome. There is the deaths of the main couple that was in the opening of Scream 2. Their deaths, both of them, were great. I love the guy's opening. He was in the bathroom, and his death is literally him listening. If you know what I'm talking about, him listening up into the stall, and Ghostface kind of stabs through the stall door in the bathroom, and it goes through it right into his face. That was insane. Great opening. And then after that Ghostface killer puts on, I believe he puts on his jacket, the guy who died, his jacket or something, and he goes back into the theater, sits next to the wife of that guy or girlfriend of that guy, and he's sitting there with the Ghostface mask on. She thinks it's him, but it's not. It's actually the killer. It's actually the Ghostface killer. So that whole like thing, I was just so entertained by that opening. I was literally loving every second of it. And for me, always boils down to, if I'm not bored when I'm watching something, if it's entertaining, that is always one of the biggest point values for me personally on a list or a ranking. So it had that super entertaining. You had all that lead up, and now you have the crowd going nuts for the stab movie. Meanwhile, this killer is killing this lady, and she goes all the way up to the front of the screen on the movie theater, and she's kind of just dying right in front of the Stab 1 movie, and the visuals of it and all that stuff. I want to save the barn burner, but freaking great. Right under a barn burner. I mean, barn burner in its own right, but I'm going to save the barn burner, but fantastic opening. Here we go. Ranking in at number 2 is Scream 3's opening. So this is a personal high for me. People are probably shocked that it's this high for me, but it is. For a long time, it wasn't. Like, I had Scream 2 as my second favorite opening for such a long time. I think, like I said, for as long as I've known Scream, but it's recently changed. I've recently really appreciated this Scream 3 opening, and I freaking love it a lot, because you talk about difference in each one, and they all do have their own differences, but you have this one here where it made me feel a lot emotionally, and that kind of stuff kind of hooks me in, like it reels me in like a fish. If you have that emotional aspect to something, I'm literally dialed in. Because why I say that is Scream 1, you get introduced to the Cotton Weary character. Scream 2, you see an arc of that character, and you, by the end of Scream 2, you are behind him a lot as a character. You're really eating him up. Then Scream 3, he opens up, and he finally, you see from what they show in the opening of Scream 3, he finally got his success. He got his flowers for all the crap he went through for the murders of Mrs. Prescott and all that kind of stuff. He finally got his reward for being falsely accused and all this, and being the hero of Scream 2, all that crazy stuff, finally telling his side of the story, and he's got success. So 3, you got him driving in his car, and I want to sum it up for you because I don't want to ramble about it too much, but basically the Ghostface killer in Scream 3, he's got the voice changer, Cotton's wife, at his house. Ghostface is pretending to be Cotton to his wife, so she's like, what the hell, Cotton's going nuts on me right now. That Ghostface is killing her, she's getting killed, or about to get killed. Cotton runs inside, he's like, whoa, she thinks it's him, she thinks Cotton's the crazy one. He's like, no, it wasn't me, but the voice changer's tripping her out and making her think it is. Basically, they both die. It doesn't work out for either of them, but all the lead up to that, Cotton and his fight with Ghostface there, I was rooting him on like crazy. I'm like, come on, like I'm going nuts in my head, like eating that whole scene up, like seeing Cotton fight Ghostface one-on-one. It was a great exchange. Seeing him, his wife get killed off, and he's just like, damn, like it's such a hard-hitting moment. And then Ghostface gets Cotton, and he stabs him right through the chest, right, looking at him face to face. So you got this character that has grown so much, and through Scream, he's kind of become a staple by the time of Scream 3, and you got Ghostface looking right at him, and Ghostface completely outclassed this man in every way. Scream 2, Ghostface didn't, but Scream 3, he absolutely did. And he kills him off, and I love that. You killed a main character in the opening of Scream. Even if you look at all the openings up to right now, with all 6 of them, that opening still lives up. It is still the only one that had the balls to do something like that. Like, that is at a different level in terms of the emotion for me, in terms of the main character, the high stakes, all that stuff. That opening was a barn burner. I'm going to save the big barn burner for the one coming up. But that opening, Cotton Weary, you're a barn burner. Here we go. Ranking in at number 1 is Scream 1996's opening. There's nothing more to say about this one. It is perfect in every single way. I don't even have to sell it in that regard, but I am going to talk about my experience of seeing it for the first time. But before I do that, Scream 1's opening, I'm about to hit you with the barn burner of an opening. because your opening was a barn burner. This opening is perfect in every single way. Like this, first of all, its credit massively for me I think it is the creepiest scene in all of Scream's franchise. When you watch this in a different light, now it's so iconic for me, and I know Scream as a franchise, so I'm like, oh, you know, like I don't think of it that much in that light. But when I saw it for the first time, this opening was creepy. Like I had my earbuds in. I was by myself, kind of loud in my ears and all that kind of stuff. The experience was great. But like when that opening and the tension they have in that, like as clever as it is and funny as it is in ways, the tension they have in that scene is pretty high. Like it is very high. Even shots of like Ghostface when he's running through the house and stuff, and like the sound effects that was going off and all that kind of stuff, that was creepy stuff. Like I was able to put myself in Casey's shoes in that and like feel like, imagine that, like being in that house, like you're on the phone, you see someone dead outside, you got this house with all these windows and shit. The creepy vibes of that, I think it is the scariest scene in all of Scream's franchise. So of course, I have to give you your props on that. But now let's talk about the other stuff, the other things about this opening that I think are even more impressive than what I was just talking about. And the opening of Scream, it's a massive piece to the puzzle of why Scream 1996 was such a game changer. And I talk about Scream's opening here because it set up everything that became so special about Scream. And that is what it did, how it broke the rules of horror movies, how it bent the rules. And stuff like Ghostface questioning Casey on the phone about other horror movies, and like he's giving her trivia, like he's giving her questions about Friday the 13th, he's giving her questions about Halloween. He name dropped things like Nightmare on Elm Street, and like that's funny because Wes Craven, like he created Nightmare on Elm Street, he created Scream, so he even threw in his own stuff. And she talked about like how, or one of them talked about how like, you know, the sequels weren't as good, and like they broke the rules. So like that already opened up your eyes when you're watching that opening, like, whoa, like this is so different than like anything I've ever seen. Of course, all of that, but just like the pacing too of it all. Like you have Casey and Ghostface exchange, and like nowadays this is so iconic, and you have their exchange, and it boils more and more through that whole opening, and it's so perfectly done. And you have so many moments where you're like, oh, is she actually gonna live this? Is she not gonna live this? I don't know. So like you're really guessing the whole time. I also the fact that you think that she's gonna be the main character in Scream, like at that time too, I'm sure, I can't speak for people who saw Scream in 1996 because I wasn't even alive yet, but I'm sure like people thought like this was gonna be the main character, and you're guessing the whole time, is she gonna live this, or she's gonna be wounded and live through it, kind of like how we saw in Scream 5. But obviously she gets killed off, and like the visuals too in this opening were stellar stuff. You got the visuals of how Ghostface gutted the boyfriend like a fish. He destroyed him on the outside, blood everywhere, and then of course Casey has such a brutal death. The stabbings and stuff like that Ghostface was doing, but the hanging shot of Casey hanging from the tree and like all the blood and all the damage on her is nuts. Like that's definitely I'd say one of the most gruesome scenes. Not as much as like the newer Screams are kind of nuts, but that is definitely up there in its own right. And the visuals were great, but you also had like that crazy, like I was saying, tension, but you had emotional tension. I talked about emotion earlier, but you also had it here too with like Casey's parents getting home and like her trying to call them, the phone in her hand, and you felt bad too. Like she had help that was right there, but they weren't there to help her. So like you had there's just so many pieces of this puzzle that make this so iconic, so memorable, and just the GOAT opening in Scream. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a lot of fun. Once again, talking about Scream, it's always such a stacked thing to talk about because all of the aspects of Scream are always so like high tier, especially something like the openings that people always look forward to. Scream's got some of the best openings. Scream 1996's opening is probably one of the best film openings, not just horror, of all time. So ranking those were very difficult, but a lot of fun. That's how I feel for sure with that. Let me know down below what your guys' rankings are for these movies. But guys, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Horror 31st.